And welcome to week 3 in the huddle. Today we're at Morrisville High School, home of the 2-0 Bulldogs. We'll talk about them a little more in a minute. I'm Kevin Cooney from the Bucks County Courier-Times, the football writer, along with Dom Costantino, the football writer here at the Intelligencer. And Dom, great to see you again.
Good to see you, Kevin.
Nice to be back.
Good to have you back. I was just going to say, we missed you last week.
I could tell. We're here, big week, final non-league week really of the season, before the season gets going. Strange schedule because of the Jewish holidays. A lot of teams playing on Thursday night. But the biggest game of the weekend, Don, is going to be Saturday night at Plymouth Whitemarsh. It's North Penn, 2-0, impressive 2-0, going up against St. Joe Prep, who's also 2-0. Is this an early look at possibly the East Final in the Class 4 and 4A?
I think it could be. I think the Prep and LaSalle, certainly, and O'Hara have kind of distinguished themselves in the Catholic League as kind of the teams to beat. And North Penn, both with the win over Liberty and the defensive effort they put up in their victory over Lansdale Catholic, has certainly established themselves as the team to beat in District 1. And it seems we say this every year when North Penn or one of these teams sort of plays a Catholic League team, that we're kind of getting, the matchup that everybody so desires between a District 1 power and a Catholic League power. And I think this is going to be a pretty good indication of what we might see come late November, December.
Obviously, North Penn last week beats Lansdale Catholic. They're a big rival in the neighborhood. St. Joe Prep went to Rutgers, beat St. Peter's Prep. What do you expect out of St. Joe Prep coming into this game?
Well, they've got a high-powered offense. I think they've shown that in both of their victories. They have 2 comeback wins. They trailed against McKeesport, had to score 2 touchdowns late. They trailed again against St. Peter's, and as Dick Beck, the North Penn coach, said, from there they just kind of put the pedal to the metal and took off. They've got Skylar Morningweg, the sophomore quarterback. He's already committed to Stanford, though he's just a sophomore. Desmond Peoples, kind of the halfback, wide-out, wing-back kind of guy they've got who does a lot of things. Prep is high-powered, and of course they're big up front. I mean, I think the big concern if you're North Penn is just how well their offensive line, which other than J.D. Zerko, the big tackle they've got, is going to be much smaller than the Prep, how well they're able to kind of hold their own up front. It's always the big concern when you play the Prep, just given how big they are.
Different is Liberty and St. Joe Prep, really, when you look at it as a comparison.
I think they're significantly different. Liberty, for one thing, graduated a lot of their linemen from last year, pretty much everybody. So they're a much different team from the team that sort of took it to North Penn in that state semifinal last year. The Prep, however, has got a bunch of big guys. I think they've got a Penn State recruit, I believe, up front. And they're just always bigger. I believe 2 years ago, North Penn won the game 17-7 at PW. Right. And the Prep had a much bigger line in that game, but North Penn was able to get low and kind of hold its blocks and maintain and do what it had to do in that game. They're going to have to do kind of the same thing Saturday night. It's just going to be a much bigger challenge, I think. Another big game on the schedule this weekend, coming up Thursday night, will be Glen Mills coming into Fairless Hills to play Pennsbury. And Kev, what do you see in that game? I guess Pennsbury had to make a bit of a change last week against Frankfort.
And you saw what Pennsbury going away from Brandon Pepper, changing quarterbacks. That's a trend that we've seen this year of teams rotating quarterbacks, at least in a large portion of the county. Chamonix's doing it. Pennsbury's obviously doing it. Dante Devine, I think, is going to be huge in this game because he's the main speed back for Pennsbury. And against Glen Mills, it's always what you do with speed. And I think you're going to see a lot of kind of going wide, a little more, outside the tackles runs. And that's where I kind of think Pennsbury can win this game. Glen Mills has beat them last year, again, mainly speed. It's not power football. It's going to be speed football. And I think when you look at Williams and Devine, Pennsbury should be better to equip to handle that this year.
I was going to say, could Eric Williams then be a big factor in this game for Pennsbury?
He could if Pennsbury is not going to throw the football. I mean, we kind of know this is the trend that they've been going with. What I want to see is if he uses Williams as a kind of on reverses, end arounds, a little more, in kind of a trick manner to see where things are going to happen here. 2 smaller schools, both 2-0, entering week 3. One is Palisades, who will play Catasauqua this week, and Palisades has obviously been more of a power the last couple of years. What have you seen so far out of Palisades?
Well, a couple of things with Palisades. Number one, James Stinnell running the ball is going to be huge for them. He had a huge game last week in their win over Bangor. But the other thing that they really showed last week that they didn't show so much in week 1 was defense, holding Bangor to 68 total yards to win that game. They get another challenge this week in Catasauqua, which is another 2-0 team in the Colonial League. They've got a converted fullback who's their quarterback this year, and Brandon Lesko. It's going to be tough for Palisades to stop, another whole new challenge, but an opportunity here for the Pirates to go 3-0. And you don't want to look ahead, but Wilson certainly looks to be the team to beat in the Colonial League. Palisades, obviously needing to take it one game at a time, but they can certainly try to keep pace.
But Kev, I think the big story in the lower end of the county, small school-wise, so far this year has got to be the Morrisville Bulldogs, where we are, today, off to a 2-0 start, and so far so good, I guess, for the Bulldogs.
So far so good. I mean, the critics will look at Esperanza and Princeton Day School are their first two opponents, and they're going, oh man, they really didn't beat anybody. They have another small school this week, that they're going to be favored over, and this is going to be a 3-0. But I think what you got to look at is the BAL as a whole is down. Lower Moreland's not as good as it has been. You look at a Bristol who has struggled in a way. I mean, they didn't really get going up against New Hope last week until very late. I think Morrisville is going to be competitive, and when you're a program like this that struggled with numbers and you struggle with everything else going on and being lost in the Pennsbury and the Chamonix kind of puzzle, all you want to do is you want to be competitive and be able to build, and you can see the signs of a little bit of growth here the last year or two.
To close out this week's segment, we're just going to do a couple of quick hits kind of on a few teams. And Kev, we'll start it off with Archbishop Wood, which is 0-2. You've had the opportunity to see them the first 2 weeks. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are right now that they're really struggling, falling behind early in games. It almost is like they are not mentally into the game until they fall behind 14-0. I mean, they played decent in coming back last week against Chestnut Hill Academy. It was a really, really good offensive attack. I mean, but you can't really, you can't fall behind like that on a week-to-week basis. Look, Wood is vulnerable right now, but I think towards the end of the year you'll see that what Steve Devlin will do is he'll get everybody together. That team will probably end up to be pretty good. Last week, Caparra Horsham went to Neshaminy, played a tough game, but lost to the Redskins. Thanks, their defense was really good, though, Don. Is this a trend that's going to continue all year?
I think it could be. I mean, Hatboro threw a shutout in Frankfort the first week, and last week, even though the conditions were bad, they forced a few turnovers. They were opportunistic, and they gave up nearly 300 yards against the Chamonix, but holding them to 13 points is pretty big. I think a lot of people going into that game anticipated that the Hatters were going to be overmatched, and they were right in it until the end. And it was a turnover for Neshaminy in the second half that ended up winning.
Now, Kev, a lot of the talk in the National Conference coming into the season was Neshaminy, Pennsbury, Abington, the usual suspects. Council Rock South off to a pretty good start at 2-0. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that this was a team that almost made the playoffs last year at 6-4, lost on the final night of the season to Council Rock North. I still wonder, though, if it's a product of the teams they have played, and just kind of when they get into the National Conference schedule, will this offense, which has been a very spread kind of offense, a team that's been able to use a lot of different weapons. If all those weapons are going to be at their disposal when you play Pennsbury, when you play an Abington, who's obviously both, they've kind of separated. Those two have separated themselves from the rest of the division in my mind. South is going to be there in the playoff line, I think, towards the bottom of the 16-team bracket, but I'm not sure they can really make a move in this division. Once you get in the division, that's when things are going to get dicey. And finally, South has built that record on the backs of the CBs, and CB South, CB East, CB West combined 1-5 here. Are things that bad up in the central part of the Bucks County?
I don't know if you want to say that bad. I mean, they've played some good opponents. West going out to Freedom the first week. East, having to play Abington, which could win the National Conference, and then going down to Council Rock South. It's just been a tough time, for these teams. They're all fairly young, and again, when we're talking about a school district that's been split into thirds. I know we're into the fifth or sixth year of that, but the talent has kind of been diluted and spread out in each of those places, and they're off to a tough start. They do get the opportunity to rebound. East hosting George Washington this week. South getting a tough game in Norristown. CB West has to go down to Wissahickon, which is smarting from a 45-0 loss to Pottsgrove. So it's not going to get any easier, but it has been a tough start for the CB schools, no doubt, being 1-5.
Also on Bucksmont Sports Now, our website, that's where you want to go every week for every game, every game story, all the stats as the games end on Friday nights. You want to go to Bucksmont Sports Now for all your football needs. And also, for your stat needs, you want to go to another website, Don?
Yeah, leaguelineup.com/Bucksmont FB Stats. We'll have all the stats compiled and updated, usually as the games are played. This weekend, again, Thursday night, a lot of the games Thursday because of the Jewish holiday. A few games Friday, and then the big showdown North Penn and St. Joe Prep on Saturday night. Again, BucksmontSportsNow.com and LeagueLineup.com/Bucksmont Football Stats.
And don't forget, you hear all the writers of the Intelligencer on the WMPV Intelligencer Scoreboard Show Friday nights after the game on 1440 WMPV and 1440 WMPV1440.com. For Dom Constantino, I'm Kevin Cooney. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week here in the Huddle.